Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling something that's probably crossed your mind as a business owner, but maybe not something you necessarily want to think about.
Definitely not the most exciting part of running a business, right?
Exactly. But hey, that's why we're here to break it all down. So we're diving into the world of business property risks and figuring out how to cover yourself. And we're drawing on some really interesting information about business property insurers to help us out.
It's kind of like that saying, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst, right?
Exactly. And the information we're looking at starts off with some real-world scenarios, which I always appreciate. Because, let's be honest, who wants to talk about insurance in the abstract? It's way more engaging to think about it in terms of stories. You know, so picture this. You're about to close a major deal, everything's lined up, and then bam, a pipe bursts in your building, and suddenly you've got a swimming pool where your inventory used to be.
Oh, that's a tough one. And a perfect illustration of why understanding business property insurance is so important. A lot of business owners, they think it's just about, okay, if something breaks, insurance will replace it. But the real issue, the thing that keeps you up at night, is that ripple effect.
It's like dominoes, right?
Yeah.
One thing happens, and it sets off this whole chain reaction.
Precisely. Like in that scenario you described, it's not just about the damaged inventory. It's about missing deadlines, maybe having to deal with upset clients because you can't deliver on time. And of course, the hit to your bottom line, it can have a massive impact on your cash flow.
And speaking of unexpected disasters, the source material also talks about the risk of fire, which, let's be real, is a pretty universal fear for anyone who owns a physical business. So imagine this. A small electrical fire breaks out in your building. Initially, you might think, okay, an inconvenience, we'll deal with it, we'll get it sorted. But could it be a bigger deal than just a minor setback?
That's the thing about business property risks. They often snowball. That small fire, sure, you can put it out, but what about smoke damage? Water damage from putting it out. And that's not even considering the potential downtime while you're getting everything back in order. You might have to close up shop for a while, and then you've got lost revenue to think about.
It's like that saying, when it rains, it pours,
Yeah.
right? You start thinking about all the things that could go wrong, and it can feel overwhelming.
It definitely can. And that's where having the right insurance coverage can really make a difference. Because when you break it down, business property insurance isn't just about replacing physical things. It's about protecting your ability to operate, to keep the lights on, even when the unexpected happens. It's about peace of mind, knowing that you've got a safety net.
Okay, so we've talked about how a seemingly small incident can turn into a major headache. But let's shift gears now and talk solutions. How do you actually protect your business from these risks? Let's delve into the world of insurance coverage options. Now, I know this might seem a bit dry, but trust me, it's worth understanding these different types of coverage: business property, business personal property, business income, and the list goes on. Why are these separate? What's the deal with all these different categories?
Think of it like this. Each type of coverage is like a specialized tool in a toolkit. You wouldn't use a hammer to tighten a screw, right? Similarly, each insurance policy is designed to address specific risks. So starting with the foundation, you've got business property coverage. This one's all about protecting your physical assets, building itself, your equipment, inventory from things like fire, theft, vandalism, and yes, even those dreaded burst pipes we talked about earlier.
So business property coverage is like the base level of protect. It's what most people think of when they hear business insurance, right?
Exactly. It's the essential starting point. But then you start layering on additional coverage based on the specifics of your business and the risks you face.
Okay, that makes sense. So then, what about business personal property? How is that different from just regular business property coverage?
Good question. Business personal property coverage steps in to protect the things you own and use for your business that aren't physically attached to your building. Think computers, laptops, printers, furniture, maybe even specialized tools or equipment. These are things you need to run your business, and they're covered under this type of policy.
So basically, if it's not nailed down, but you need it to run your business, it falls under business personal property coverage. That makes sense. Okay, so we've covered property, but we also talked about lost revenue earlier. So what happens if a business has to temporarily shut down because of, say, a fire? What kind of coverage kicks in to help with that loss of income?
That's where business income coverage comes in. It's sometimes called business interruption insurance, and it can be a lifesaver for businesses that have to close their doors for a while due to a covered event.
Okay, so it's like insurance for your income, essentially.
Exactly. If something happens that forces you to close down, whether it's a fire, a natural disaster, even something like a government-mandated shutdown, this coverage can help replace that lost income and cover your ongoing expenses while you're getting back on your feet. Things like rent, utilities,
Right.
even employee wages. Those bills don't just disappear because you're closed, right?
Right, they definitely don't. Okay, so we've covered business property, business personal property, and business income. But then the source material mentions some other types of coverage that sound a bit more, well, intense, like building ordinance coverage. That one sounds kind of ominous, to be honest.
It does, doesn't it? But it's actually not as complicated as it sounds. Remember our fire example from earlier? Let's say your building is damaged and needs significant repairs or even a complete rebuild. Well, building code might have changed since your building was constructed or last renovated, and you're required to bring everything up to code. That can get expensive quickly.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that. So building ordinance coverage helps cover the cost of those code upgrades.
Exactly. It bridges the gap between simply repairing your building to its original state and bringing it up to the latest codes, which often involves additional materials, labor, even architectural or engineering fees.
So it's kind of like future-proofing your rebuilding process in a way. That's interesting. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about liability. Our source material mentions business liability coverage, but also a business umbrella policy. What's the difference? Are those two separate things?
They are. Think of business liability coverage as your first line of defense against everyday accidents or mishaps. If someone slips and falls in your store, if a customer claims you made a mistake on their order and they suffered a loss, that kind of thing, this coverage is designed to protect you from those financial hits.
So then the business umbrella policy is
Yeah.
like an extra layer of protection on top of that.
Exactly. It's there to provide an extra buffer of protection if a claim exceeds the limits of your primary liability coverage. Let's say, for example, a client's order is delayed because of that burst pipe situation we talked about earlier, and they decide to sue you for a significant amount, an amount that's more than your general liability policy covers. That's when your umbrella policy would kick in to help cover those additional costs.
So it's there for those worst case scenarios where the cost could be really substantial. It's good to know that kind of backup is available. Okay, moving on. We also have business crime coverage on our list. What does that one entail?
That one's all about protecting you from internal risks, specifically crimes committed by employees. I know it's not something people like to think about, but employee theft, embezzlement, forgery, even things like cybercrime committed by someone within your organization, these are all unfortunate realities of running a business. Business crime coverage is designed to help you recover financially from those types of situations.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, haven't we? We've talked about everything from fires and burst pipes to lawsuits and even employee theft.
We have. It's a lot to consider, but that's the thing about running a business. There are a lot of moving parts, and it's essential to be prepared for anything.
Exactly. And that's why you do these deep dives, to equip you with the knowledge you need to make informed decisions for your business. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about ticking boxes on an insurance form. It's about protecting your livelihood, the business you've poured your heart and soul into.
I couldn't agree more. And if I can leave you with one final thought, it's this. Don't just consider the initial event, the fire, the burst pipe, the lawsuit, but really think about the cascading consequences. How would your business be impacted if you had to close your doors for a week, a month, longer? How would you support your employees? Asking yourself these tough questions can be eye-opening and really help you determine what level of risk you're comfortable with and what kind of safety net you need to have in place.
Absolutely. And as always, the best defense is a good offense. Being informed, asking the right questions, and having the right coverage in place can make all the difference when it comes to protecting your business.
I completely agree.
So until next time, stay safe out there, everyone.